Hello, and you are very welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast, brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout the series, I'm speaking with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth, and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. So today I'm joined by Patrick Flannagan, founder and managing director of Clarence George. Patrick, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm very well, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. So before we begin, I'm going to give a little bit of background, as usual, on Patrick and his business. Clarence George is a bespoke insurance and investment executive search firm who specialise in sourcing the very best quantitative talent within financial services. Patrick himself is approaching 20 years' experience within financial services search recruitment, and he set up his own business, Clarence George, in 2019. He's passionate about improving the levels of customer service in the industry. Now, Clarence George work with some of the most prestigious companies in the UK, in Ireland, Hong Kong and Bermuda. Clarence George's philosophy and ethos is built upon their core values of quality, teamwork, humility, innovation, passion and integrity. Following a very successful initial 4 years based in London, they have ambitious growth plans and are planning to open a Newry office to capitalise on the buoyant Belfast and Dublin financial services jobs market. Patrick himself is passionate about giving local graduates London equivalent careers back home, and being originally from Newry and having graduated from Queen's University Belfast. Patrick, what a mission and what a vision you have, but obviously, you know, Newry is still very much part of who you are, and welcome home.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
So you've been building this business over 20 years in London, but do you want to tell me how it all started for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came out of Queen's University back in 2001. Seems only yesterday, but I can't believe it, 20 odd years ago now. And like typical graduate, was looking around for jobs at the time, and wasn't too much in the local economy. So basically went across the water, started in Edinburgh. Worked for a company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car, a big US firm, on their graduate management program, which was a fantastic experience. Worked there for about 3 years, and then recruitment was mentioned to me as a sort of a job, and one of these sort of jobs that you kind of fall into. And I started in 2004 doing accountancy and finance recruitment. Moved to Manchester at the time. That's where the firm was based that I was working for. Spent about 12 years there, and really enjoyed it. And then sort of evolved with my recruitment career, really. In 2007, 2008, the financial markets were badly hit by the credit crunch at the time, and I then evolved into actuarial recruitment. At that time, I have to admit, I had no clue what an actuary was, but it was very obvious to me it was definitely the way to go forward in recruitment. It was a very highly skilled, very niche skill set, very few people, massive demand, and especially with technology coming into the industry, trying to change things, internal recruitment, trying to do their own thing. It was something that I got into, and that's ultimately what I've been doing for the last 12 years. Worked at big corporates, worked at a startup as well, but then decided to launch my own company back in 2019. And 4 years later, it's going very, very well. Up to 10 people now in London, but keen to see if we can get our Irish office going. And it absolutely 100% has to be Newry for me. Absolutely.
So this is where you're from originally then?
Absolutely, yeah. I've got a big passion for it. The obvious place would be Belfast or Dublin, of course, right? And especially with the clients that we work with, big insurance companies, banks, asset managers. Dublin is actually probably the likely location, but from what we do, it doesn't necessarily have to be based there. So Newry would be a fantastic location for us, and it just gives those local graduates those opportunities that maybe 20 odd years ago when I was looking around didn't really see at the time. Just want to sort of see if we can offer that for the local talent pool, really.
So who would you be looking for?
So I say graduates but it can be people that's actually, graduated even, 5, 10, 15 years ago. I think it needs to be that sort of level of background, because we are recruiting very, very highly qualified people. So it takes a lot to really understand these markets. They can be quite complex, especially as part of financial services. So it's a graduate level sort of person really, that, either maybe coming out of university, but certainly people that have actually maybe gone off and done other careers and want to maybe sort of pivot into this type of role. I mean, it was my second job, after university, so I'm very much open to people with other life experience as well. But I do think it does need a certain level of that sort of academic background to be able to be successful in it as well, because it can definitely take a while to figure out what an actuary does.
No,
it certainly did for me.
So I was going to ask you there, do you need to have any background or knowledge of financial services? Would that be preferable?
No, not at all. No. So my background, I did a standard sort of, I suppose, management business type degree in Queen's. So there was a financial element to it, and I've always been interested in finance. So I suppose I'm in financial services recruitment, and if you've got a general interest for, I suppose, the financial world, investments, then it's something you can pick up. It really is. And that's it's a big part of it, because ultimately we're not doing the job that these people are doing, but we need to have a pretty good grasp and a good understanding, because we're moving these people from pretty good jobs to hopefully even better jobs, and it's understanding the nuances of it really.
So explain how it actually works. How do you find these brilliant people?
Yeah, so in the actuarial market, there's probably only about 30,000 actuaries across the whole of the UK sector. So it is quite niche. So it's pretty.
And they would be the top level. These are really super brains, aren't they?
Yeah, the way I sort of just kind of describe them is they're probably just one step up from an accountant with regards to what they do at numbers. Because I did accountancy and finance recruitment for 6-7 years, and they were very smart people with numbers. Mm-hmm. But these are the real mathematicians. These are the real number crunchers. So they're the ones that work out basically your life insurance policies, figure out when we're all going to potentially fall off this mortal coil. They also do our investments around our pensions and stuff. So they're doing quite complex mathematical modelling to work out premiums from insurance, returns on investments, your pension contributions, all that type of stuff. So it can be quite techie stuff.
I'm glad you actually explained that, because I'd heard of an actuary. As someone who failed her maths GCSE, it was never a world I was going to occupy, but I knew that these were extremely bright people who were going to go on to really good jobs. Mm-hmm. And who needs them now? Who is it? All these insurance companies? Yeah,
absolutely, and that's why it's a great profession. So I'd even say to people out there maybe listening, if they don't want to necessarily fall into recruitment, because recruitment definitely suits a sort of a more what I would call sales type individual, business developer, relationship management person. But if you're very good at maths, it's a fantastic degree. If you go down the degree route and then going into a job afterwards, it's a great career. So, and
the opportunities, and I suppose the earnings as well are pretty good.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's all the big insurance companies you can think of, like real blue chip names, big four consultancies, investment banks, asset managers. So basically looking after our pension money really, mm-hmm. which is pretty critical, especially with everybody living longer as well. So there's huge demand for these people, and because of the qualification to become an actuary, because most of these people will have had very good degrees in STEM subjects, but then they have to go on and do further qualification, which can take 3 to 5 years to become an actuary. Right. So it's not easy. So that's why you've got such a small number as a profession, 30,000 or whatever it is. So it's absolutely, earnings is very, very good straight off the bat for these for these people coming out.
You've built your business in London, and that was obviously where you needed to be, because anybody that I knew that was ever an actuary always started in London. Is that still the kind of the normal route?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, London is the sort of the quintessential insurance market. It's been going for 400 years. It's literally where they set up insurance in a coffee shop. They used to ring a bell when a ship was sunk at sea years ago.
Oh, right. Is that how it started?
It came out of a coffee shop in the centre of London, yeah. And it's just really evolved from there. So, yeah, you've got the other markets like New York, Singapore, but London is really as an actuary is the premier market, and that's ultimately where a lot of the business is.
And how easy was it for you to build your business?
So, good question. So, as you can imagine, probably trying to get into something like this is not something that you just do very, very quickly, but it's evolved with 20 years of just working in recruitment. And as I said, I've been working in this specific market now for 12 years. So I've learned the trade with other corporate companies that gave me an opportunity to work in this sector. So how easy was it? For me, it wasn't complex because I wasn't doing something that I hadn't done before. You know, I wasn't reinventing the wheel. I was very, very successful recruiter. I knew the market. It's a very people-based job, so you tend to form relationships with your candidates and clients, so they want to work with you, maybe not necessarily the company you work for. And I've had a very certain style, which I've brought into hopefully setting up this business that has worked really, really well in recruitment. And it's kind of flowed quite naturally for me because clients and candidates wanted to come with me, and that's been the big sort of, I suppose, success element to it. Because I've been basically for the last 4 years creating my own business, doing what I've been doing for the last 20 years really, and that's why it hasn't been overly complex in actually setting it up. It's actually now trying to grow it. That's the complex bit.
And it's yours now, which is great. So you can do that and you can take it to places that it needs to go. You're working with some of the most prestigious companies around the world, really. Are you allowed to name drop?
Yeah, sure. So, it was quite funny when I mentioned these names because it's like, well, look, you literally... You didn't exist 4 years ago, and it was just yourself at the time setting it up. And some of our main clients are the likes of Ernst & Young. We've placed in the companies like BlackRock, Schroders, Legal in General, Prudential. It's really is those type of firms that we work with. So, but those are the firms that would like to partner with the more bespoke type recruiter. You could go to larger, bigger corporate recruiters, but they wouldn't really have the necessary, teams in there with the right knowledge and skill sets to do it. So they tend to partner with more sort of bespoke recruiters anyway. So yes, it's an amazing sort of client list. But as you can imagine, there's massive demands of the quality recruiter that they want.
Yes.
So it's incumbent on me that I have to get the right people.
And you mentioned there that pool of the right people is quite small. Did you say 30,000?
30,000 actuaries, and that's one part of what we do. The other bit is CFAs, Chartered Financial Analysts, which do more on the investment side, and there's going to be more of them. But yeah, actuaries is probably a good 60 to 70% of our business.
And, how many actuaries are needed right now? What is the demand like?
It's huge, really. There's a lot actually having to come from overseas. So we're placing a lot of international actuaries into our clients in London, from you name it, South Africa, India, New Zealand. Just ladies starting now with Ernst & Young in a couple of weeks, coming over from Sydney, Australia. So it's a phenomenal...
So you're sourcing from all over the world?
All over the world, yeah, it's great.
And do you find them on LinkedIn, or how do you find them, or where do you go looking?
We've got an existing database, and that's a database that I've built in my career over the last 12 years in this market. So that's the main one that we would source our talent from. LinkedIn is great. That's probably second. LinkedIn, everybody's got LinkedIn nowadays, so you kind of have to differentiate yourself as a headhunter, because
what do you do differently from the competition, or a regular recruitment company?
Absolutely, and the competition would be mostly now internal recruitment in firms. There's a lot of companies now, especially the big firms, will have their own internal recruitment teams.
Sure.
So they'll be on LinkedIn every day trying to source talent. So if we're just doing that as well, we're not really offering anything different, really. But LinkedIn is a great tool to reach out to people and connect with.
And see the skill sets.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the third, and I think this is the big one for me, it's actually the referrals. Once you really look after a client or a candidate, it's the type of market where these people they put so much time and investment into their careers. They really want a good headhunter that isn't just finding them jobs. That's not really the difficult part for these people. They're very much, there's jobs all the time for these people. It's really understanding them as people. They're not really moving for money a lot of the time because they're incredibly well paid. These are people that just need to be intellectually stimulated. Is it the mentor? Where's their career path going? So it's about the relationships. And on the back of that, once you start working the market for a certain amount of time and being successful, being a quite niche market, if you've got a good reputation, you're going to get referrals. And that's the bit that the internal recruiters won't necessarily go, or the direct LinkedIn adverts or online adverts don't do. It's a real sort of people person job, and it's really understanding what would it take for somebody in a really well paid job that are probably very, very, very happy to move to the next job. And that's the really fascinating thing about it. And I've actually had people with psychology degrees that joined me over the years, and that works quite well as well.
Right.
It's just understanding people ultimately.
Absolutely. And understanding what people want out of life too. You can have all of the money in the world, but if you're not happy in the job and the environment, and retention is such a massive thing for organisations. I know you're at the recruitment end, but lots of people are saying now, but how do we keep them?
Yeah.
And do you work on that? I mean, is that kind of when the package has to be right, it has to look right, and it has to make sure that this person can have the right work-life balance too?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I think, and that's ultimately why people are moving at the minute. It is exactly that. It's especially with the pandemic. If people now aren't offering the agile working, they'll just go somewhere else. So it's a real sort of. There's a number of reasons, I suppose, if you sort of make a list of why you're in a job and why you're happy and maybe why you're dissatisfied, and it's just really trying to figure out what those reasons are. So it can take conversations that go over the course of 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years before you really get to understand, actually, this is what you want and this is what we can provide for you.
And what's it like, say, if you go to London, to where you're based at the minute? Because we saw that during COVID, people moved out of all of the flats on the offices and those empty office buildings, but now there's massive push to get people back into the office. Do you think that's ever going to happen?
Yeah, no, it's definitely come back, certainly in a big way in London. It's quite noticeable, actually. I spend 5 days in the office. I still quite like going in to the office, but you definitely do see it. Sort of like Monday, Fridays are quite quiet. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, you can't get an office space or a phone booth or anything, and everybody comes in. It tends to be that sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in London, and people are sort of spending maybe 2 days working from home, and that's kind of basically expected now. And if firms aren't able to do that, they're going to lose the talent. So
that's what you need to offer. You can't just say, look, we're totally office-based. Is that not what the actuaries want, or the people that you need to source?
Yeah, no, I think everybody wants that mix now, that hybrid working environment. I think there's...
Especially if you can do the job remotely. Why do you have to be
absolutely
desk present?
Absolutely. I mean, I generally believe that there has to be a good balance of both, really, because... And I was quite old-fashioned, I suppose, before lockdown. I thought I had to be in the office every day showing up.
I did too, yeah.
And that was the old school approach. And but now, you've got to, because, especially in the actuarial or insurance profession, they're competing now with the likes of the tech firms, the Googles, the Facebooks, for this sort of quantitative talent. Because especially programming languages, we a lot of actuaries will do programming like Python programming, and the tech firms are looking at this skill set now. And they can offer people very, very, very good packages with regards to working from home, lifestyle sort of choices and stuff. It's a big firm, whereas you got this like insurance industry 400 years old. It's taken a while to just adapt to it. And a few of our clients did take a little while to sort of understand that. And now everybody's pretty much figured it out, and I've got that sort of got that sort of arrangement with their staff.
So now you're looking to open an office back home to offer local graduates this same sort of London lifestyle, if you like. How would that look for anybody that came to work for you? What would you be offering them?
Sure. So pretty much to emulate what we've done in London, really. We've sort of built the business out of the London market, but the Newry office then would be very much focused on the Irish insurance investment market, which again would predominantly be London based clients. There'd be some maybe in Belfast as well, but again it's mainly the big insurers and the pension firms and asset managers are in Dublin. So to really ultimately be very much the founders of the Irish office. So we're looking for like a really unique sort of skill set where people aren't just wanting to be a recruitment consultant. They want to be a manager, a director, a leader of the business, and sort of maybe an entrepreneur themselves one day. And that's the journey we've been on in London. So I've got a team now in London that are stepping up into managerial roles and want to sort of take on more, set up new divisions, international locations. So my goal now is to see if we can create that within the Newry office. And look, it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal career opportunity for people, not just the earning potential, but just dealing with this type, really it is such a rewarding job when you're sort of getting amazing career opportunities for people that necessarily when you have that first conversation with you, maybe don't necessarily think they want to move jobs, or maybe have a potentially low opinion of a recruiter. I say, the industry, when I joined it, I couldn't believe it. This is obviously going back a while now, but I couldn't believe the low levels of customer service.
Is that right?
Not returning people's calls, not giving them feedback after interviews. The role I had at Enterprise Rent-A-Car was an American company. We would actually be penalised on our commission because of low customer service. So it was a great training ground for me going into recruitment, because I was like, well, surely if somebody's gone for interview, the least you can do is to actually give them a quick call at the end of it.
There's nothing worse when you hear nothing and then you hear actually that post has been filled now. Nobody even got back.
Absolutely, yeah. And that was one of my biggest things. We just thought was like, it's just shocking.
Lousy.
It's just shocking, really. You know, I mean, there's a part of it where sometimes the client necessarily isn't great for providing that feedback to the recruiter. But I've had pretty much a bit of a zero tolerance policy even with clients on that, and that's probably why I'm so respected in my industry, to say, look, no, we're not going to mess people around. If they're going to go for interview, they may be rejected, but can we at least give them some exactly? Can we give them a bit of feedback? And that's kind of my sort of, I suppose, my sort of real working class roots. Really, I just always want to treat people with decency and respect. And said if they go for interview, and that was a big thing that I've really done, and that's probably one of the things that I've sort of separated myself from the rest of the industry, because sometimes recruitment doesn't have the best reputation because it's very cutthroat, it's very competitive. They think everybody's just out purely just to make money. But look, not all of us are like that, and there's a different way to do it as well.
Is it quite interesting for you now, as someone who previously worked for someone else and then recruited for clients, to now be building your own firm and recruiting for your own firm? Does it give you a different view of what that's like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I really sort of value the experience I had in all these other places, to see what was good, and there was a lot good, but then there was the other side, and that was the bit that I've been trying to avoid. So yeah, it was great. It was great to sort of be able to sort of see that, and now that I've sort of been able to set up my own company, it's allowed me to have a clear sort of vision of what way I want to do it. And hopefully I'm getting it right, but there's still definitely mistakes and learns, and that's what makes it so interesting after all these years.
And growing up in Newry and then working in London, you've said already it absolutely has to be back here. The office needs to be here. Why do you love Newry so much? This podcast is sponsored by Granite Legal Services, a niche business and immigration law practice located in the heart of Newry City. Granite Legal Services provides legal advice to both individuals and companies alike across a wide range of industries, from employment, commercial or corporate law matters to immigration law. Granite Legal Services focuses on providing legally sound, practical advice to its clients. To get in touch, visit www.granitelegalservices.co.uk or contact 028 3026 2200.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, I don't know, like most people really, it's that sort of affinity from where you've been brought up. It's actually quite funny because probably the accent isn't as strong, and I know I've been away for a long time.
No, it's an interesting accent.
Yeah,
I'm hearing all sorts.
Well, I actually was born in Leicester in England of all places, but my parents, my dad was from South Armagh, my mum's from Mayo, and they moved back to Newry in 1987, and I was only a little kid. I think it was 7 or 8 at the time. So it came in with a very strong English accent.
You sounded like Gary Lineker.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Came back in and obviously lost that accent fairly quickly when I was a kid. Obviously, when you're socialising as a kid, lost it fairly quickly. And then, obviously went away, did a bit of travelling, had a year in Australia, had a year in America. And then I've been in England now for 20 years, so it's definitely, the English accent's probably creeping back in a little bit. I like to think I've still got the Newry, the dulcet tones, but it's just where the family is. My mum and my brother and sister are in Newry at the minute. They've been living here for the last 35 years. My friends are still here as well. I think it's so unique about Ireland. You just can't sort of, everybody's, even when I speak to Irish people over in England, we're over there for a career, but we're all like miss home, and it's just unfortunate sometimes, and that's why I'm passionate about hopefully giving this opportunity to people where you can have your family, your lifestyle, and you don't necessarily always have to go across the water to achieve that.
Well, I'm sure there'll be many people that work with, trying to stop this brain drain that we've had over the years, would be supporting what you're actually doing. Do you see yourself spending more time here then? Is there a personal reason here too?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I definitely do. London was great in my 20s and 30s.
So are you going to come back full time and then just...
That's the plan, yeah. So the plan would be once I can, I'm actively hiring at the moment for the office in Newry. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg for me at the minute, because it's once I've got people, then I can spend more time here. So I'm looking to see if we can get at least maybe 1 or 2 people on this year to get the office going, and then that would be me here for quite a lot of time training people up and developing them. And then once they're up and running, my job is then to sort of bring them into those sort of managerial roles where they can sort of grow the team in Newry. So I didn't expect myself to be sort of back and forth probably between Newry and London quite a bit. But yeah, I definitely really want to sort of settle down back home now and just, sort of been there and done the London lifestyle, and it'd be quite nice to have a little bit more peace and quiet.
And at what point did that start to creep in? Because I know COVID again was something that made people reevaluate.
Well, funny enough, I remember when I left in 2001 to go for my first job in Edinburgh, I thought I was going to be away for 2 years. And I think a lot of people do that. I really do.
This is just temporary. I'm just doing this now.
It was just one of those where like, I'm just going to go away for a couple of years and come back. And it's one of these where you just wake up one day and it's like 20 years later, you're still away.
And you're paying a mortgage and you've all of the trappings of grown up life.
Exactly. So I've always wanted to come back, but just, life takes over, and you can get caught up in just the bright lights and the lifestyle. But now it's sort of a lot more maturity, especially in the last 5-6 years, setting up my own business and stuff. It would just be nice. And I'm home fairly often anyway. I'm very, very, very family orientated person anyway, so I try and get home as much as I can. I spend a good 2-3 weeks at Christmas, week at Easter.
I was going to say, it's not just those rose tinted glasses where you have lovely lovely nostalgic memories. Are you ready for what it actually means?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love it back here, and it's just
transformed great. As well, hasn't it? I mean, everybody wants to be here now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we have to probably keep it a secret, really, because
I think the secret's out.
You reckon? Yeah, because honestly, I've heard some people obviously with the house prices here, because you're looking at anything in the southeast of England, it's a shoebox for about $500,000. So people are thinking, well, maybe you could work in Northern Ireland, especially with the agile working. I could definitely see it. I've heard a few people coming over this way, and it's with people with no links to Northern Ireland whatsoever. It could be the secret, but I need to get back home then before the house prices come up.
You really do. You need to get that house bought, absolutely. Well, it is so interesting, and even just, I've talked to quite a few people who've maybe worked in London, or their young people have been there, and then they had to come back during lockdown, and then they thought, so I'm paying for that shoebox in London, and I could actually buy a huge house by the sea or something like that for what I'm paying.
Yeah.
But then interestingly, my son is in London. I was just saying to you before we started recording, and they're starting to build flats in London where you, as a young professional, have access to not just a gym, but you have a spa, you have an outdoor heated swimming pool. It is trying to make that London life attractive again to keep the young people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
it's a very competitive market out there, and long may that continue. It's great to see that there are so many jobs for young people, because I know in my time when I started out there weren't.
Yeah.
What kind of boss would you be?
Boss, yeah, that sounds like a very sort of.
This is a recruitment question. This is an job interview for you.
Absolutely. For me, the logic that I have is if I can hire really good people, and people better than me. I remember I heard this years ago, and it's so true. I've got very high standards myself, but if I can hire people that have, as good as me, if not better, I'm all about just empowering people, because the journey for me is, I kind of want to create more entrepreneurs. That's the bottom line, because I'm a big believer in just giving something back to society. And look, what I get in my job now is not necessarily the recruitment side or making the money side of the job. It's more, that's what it was in my 20s and 30s, being ultra competitive, trying to be the biggest biller and stuff. I've always had that about me. Now it's about actually just giving my, I suppose, mentoring and coaching skills to create a new sort of MD of Clarence George moving forward. And it could be recruitment, it could be something else. So, that's the bit for me that's really passionate. So the boss that I am is, look, I don't really want to be that sort of dictatorial type boss. I think, I just want to, I suppose, empower people and get out of their way, and if they
let them do their job.
Let them do their job, and and look, that's it ultimately, because that's always how I was. I hated being managed as such, or micromanaged.
And you lose your confidence when that happens.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, well, if you've got smart, ambitious people, they're going to make mistakes, fine, but as long as they've got ultimately the passion and commitment, and that's my non-negotiable. I really want that, like, passion and drive and commitment, because that's what I've had, and that's ultimately how I built my career. I didn't have any sort of handouts or any sort of family contacts or, you know, any nepotism or anything like that. It was literally, I was the first person in my family to go to university. You know, I went over to England, didn't know what to expect, and it was just hard graft, and that's what I'm looking for. So yeah, that's it. You know, as long as people give me that, they'll probably just see the nice Patrick. But if I don't get that, then there is the other side, and I've got a zero. And I just want people that are just really passionate, committed, and will just really work hard, because ultimately that's what it takes to be successful.
What's been the biggest challenge you faced so far?
Biggest challenge, I'd say probably, I suppose it'd have to be the pandemic, really, in the sense that I'd only had the business going for 12 months. So set up the business, and then 12 months later there was the global pandemic, which was interesting to say the least.
How many members of staff did you have at that?
Well, that was the fortunate thing in a way, because there was just myself and two others, so it was 3 in total. So I purposely sort of decided to build the business very much organically. I could have went away and got private equity investment and hired 10, 20 people straight away. But for me, it was always going to be about purely 100% my investment, no other sort of external parties. So I've done it very, very gradually with graduates. So one graduate, next graduate, that type of way. So there was only 3 of us at the time. So it wasn't, thankfully, it wasn't a business of 50, 60 people, where in recruitment, especially in a pandemic, you know, we had our best client at the time when it happened, when it was announced around that March period of 2020. Basically 10 jobs we had with them were all put on hold, and it was a bit like, okay, this is interesting. I've just set up a business a year ago. Patrick, I remember as well, I bought my first property just literally 6 months before the credit crunch. I thought, why does this always happen to me? I bought it right at the height of the property boom, and then I've set up a business a year before the pandemic. I thought, goodness me, but I do like a challenge, and goodness me, it was. But it was look, ultimately, it was fine. You know, looking back, I was thinking to myself, maybe I should have been a lot more stressed out and panicked. But I think because I didn't have a big workforce, and I knew I had enough sort of financial resources behind me that could sort of probably get through a year. And you knew the financial help was
coming in, and
yeah, exactly, and then look, after probably about 4 months, the clients started to call back in again, and because in this type of market, being sort of, you know, technically gifted people, they can all work from home on computers and laptops.
Once they worked out how to do it.
And that's exactly it. So they've seen their own existing staff working from home and thought, well, actually, look, this is actually going quite well. They've been sent out laptops, been sent out mobile phones. So then they thought, well, we've still got all these vacancies. Can we recruit? So it was probably a little bit of a suck it and see it approach at the start. And it just gradually came back on to the point, probably the last 18 months, I've never seen a busier recruitment market in my career.
Is that right?
It's up, and I think because it was this period that nothing happened, it's all come back on really thick and fast, and it's really right up until now, and hopefully it continues, of course, but it's been very, very, very active.
And obviously we now know that, you know, there are certain people out there, and they could have any job, and the onus really is on the company to attract them. But I'm wondering too, if we just go right back to going for a job or going for an interview, what advice would you give to people listening to this if they were looking to do something else, or wanted to apply for a job and needed to put themselves forward? What would you say to people? It's probably taking you back to the early stages of recruitment rather than the niche end that you're dealing with now. But I just think it might be useful for people listening in today.
Yeah. So I think for me, the big thing with most people, I think, is confidence, really, ultimately, at the end of the day. And
a lot of people have said their confidence has been knocked a bit since the pandemic. They just don't, that connection, that face-to-face thing. I mean, are people doing interviews online, or do you have to go face-to-face, or what way does it work?
Yeah, I think probably, the majority, probably I'd say 80% at the minute start off at least as a Zoom or a Teams video, and especially you working from home, you're not maybe having that sort of interaction. But I think that's why I'm sort of, maybe I didn't finish that point earlier. That's why I'm a big believer of the hybrid working environment. There's definitely a massive need for people to get into the office and have that sort of stimulation and really sort of that sort of knocking ideas together and just basically being able to improve, because I don't think I'd be anywhere near as good as I am if I didn't have that sort of day-to-day interaction.
Social interaction. You do
Absolutely.
need it, yeah.
And you look around and you see different things and you go, look, that person's great at that, or that person's great at that, and that's how you learn. So I'd say to anybody, you know, one of the big things we did see, especially with the graduates starting in the pandemic, they were all basically, their career was working from home. So now when they're coming back into the market, they're very resistant to going into a job where people want them to come into the office. And some of our clients have really struggled with that. There's been massive pushback, especially with the graduates that started in 2020, 21. They're like, well, I've always worked from home. Yeah. So we obviously remember what it was like before then. And I think that's the message I would say to those people. You got to get into the office, and you got to
change your mindset around.
Yeah, absolutely. You can still have the couple of days from home, but not this 5 days.
You need to
from
come
home.
and meet people.
Absolutely, you got to meet people. You got to pick a mentor 5, 10, 15 years ahead of you, and learn. And it's those water cooler moments as well, where you can just pick somebody's brain, and also
have a bit of fun.
Have a bit of fun, and the gel of teams. I think I did I think it was a bit of a blog probably about a year ago for one of our clients, because they were like, why is people leaving us? We're paying well, we've got great jobs. And I said, look, it's not your company, it's across the whole of the industry. And I called it the gel of company, the glue of organizations is not as strong anymore, because you will have friction in business and in life and in any relationship. And look, sometimes it's best delivered in person. Or do you know what? If you've had a bit of a testy day, you can go for a quick coffee with them, or go for a quick glass of wine, a beer after work. That's not happening, and I think a lot of people fell out of love with their current companies, their current teams, their current managers. So that's my bit of advice on that one. Whereas regards to preparing for interviews, I think the confidence comes from it's basically do your research. Whatever it is you're going for, it doesn't matter what type of industry or what level it is or what qualification you need. Just do a little bit of it's the quickest way to impress somebody. And so many people, I do a lot of interviews now, and I don't even think they've looked at the website. And like, come on, really? Yeah. It's just, and you can, let's be honest, you can pick a few things off the website, make a few notes on your pad, and then just, regurgitate in the interview. It doesn't take much, but it's just that little bit of preparation, and it ultimately shows the enthusiasm, because I think that's what most people are really looking for.
I was speaking to one business owner recently, and they said the amount of times they have no shows. Like, imagine, back in my day, the thought of you had a job interview and you just didn't bother because, I got a better offer. That's the world that we're in at the minute, though.
Yeah. And
then another friend was going for a very, very senior job recently, and she said there was no face-to-face interview, that it was done by a Zoom, but it was recorded with nobody on the other side of it, and questions popped up on the screen, and you had 30 seconds to answer the question, and then the next one popped up. And she said she nearly had a panic attack because it was just so she just felt so constricted and thought, please, can I just start again? This is awful. So anyway, recruitment has changed so much, and maybe that's not a good idea either.
Look, that's interesting. That's the first time I've heard about something like that, and I think that's where we need to be really careful of, because
you can lose really good people.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, technology is brilliant, but let's let it not take over, because ultimately, when you think about what you do on a daily basis, a lot of people sort of boil it down to, once you've you can get your earnings to pay your mortgage, ultimately you think, do I actually really enjoy this place? Do I actually enjoy these people I work with? And that's ultimately what it is. It's a very, very social thing, working, isn't it?
And human interaction is what makes us all tick, and hopefully we won't be all replaced by bots, but who knows?
Who knows?
Clarence George, where did the name come from?
So that's a good. You know what? That was probably the hardest thing that I actually, because you said at the start how easy was it, and I actually came across as hopefully not too nonchalant about it, that it wasn't that hard, but that was the hardest bit.
Yeah. What are we going to call this?
Yeah, honestly, it really was, because I knew what I was. As I said, I knew what I was doing, so I wasn't going to do something different. And I was like, well, I need a really good name, and I was thinking like, you got the thing like PF Associates or Flannagan Associates, and I thought that's just same as everyone, really. And I just, long story short, I was basically for a long time thinking, I need someone that actually means something to me. And being sort of financial service recruitment, quite high-end financial service recruitment in London, people sort of mention sort of these quite sort of, I suppose, how would we call it, sort of names that have some sort of, exactly, names with sort of prestige. So I was messing around sort of on my notepad one Sunday afternoon, writing names down with quite prestigious names. And then I actually then thought, like, one of my favourite films is It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
I don't know if you know that film.
Yes, absolutely.
It's
Christmas.
Every Christmas. Absolutely love that film. And it's kind of my ethos about life and business. I've always been an entrepreneur, business person, love to be the best and earn money and stuff, but ultimately I'm that family person that wants to look after people and look after family. And I love that show so much. Just absolutely resonates with me every year when I watch it. And obviously Clarence is the angel,
Yes.
and George Bailey is the young
I'm
whippersnapper.
so glad I asked this question.
It's random, isn't it? But it's what. And then I thought to myself, that's it. So
Bailey
look,
and
Clarence George, and I thought, that sounds right for our market. It's got the right sort of name. It's got the right sort of, got a bit of prestigious sound to it. And
you didn't go with James Stewart.
No, I didn't go with James Stewart. No, and and I just thought, that actually means something to me, because the film means something to me, and that's the kind of ethos of my business as well. It's not to be the biggest, it's not to be the most profitable. It's just to build a really good quality business where I can give back. Ultimately.
I'm so glad I asked that. I wasn't going to, and then I thought, I wonder why. That's really, really nice. What do you like to do in your spare time? You said you're a family man.
Yeah, well, family man, no family of my own at the minute, and that hopefully could, if I can stop, just working. Yeah, exactly. So that could be the next step for me, which would be lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, love to just get back and spend time with my family and just help out as well. So my mum's widowed, my brother's got autism, so really there's always been that little bit of guilt, to be fair, being over there, but a lot of it was to say, look, one day I can come back home and look after them, and haven't done a bad job from far away, but there's nothing like just being back home and having that sort of interaction, just nipping around for a coffee or a tea or what have you. So that's a big part of coming back home to spend time with family. And
your mum must be delighted.
I think so. Yeah. I'd say
of course she is.
I'd say she probably is. Yeah. No, it's great, and I love coming back. I mean, because that's why I get a big part of out of life now.
What's your favourite part of home?
What, being home, or
all of it? Just what do you do first when you get back?
Yeah, well, what I do, I quite like I was quite big into my sport when I was younger, and then I sort of didn't really do much for many years. But in the last sort of probably 5 years, I'm big into my running now. So I do a lot of running, do a lot of like 10Ks, half marathons. Did the London Marathon there back in September. So I love running. So when I come back home now this weekend, the plan was today, and I didn't get a chance because I had to meet my accountant, who's my university mate, Brendan. Give a shout out to Brendan at Malone Lynchon. I met him today for a quick coffee, and we went through the boring bits of accounts. So meet friends. Still got my friends from uni and school here. Probably do park run tomorrow in Rostreva. Love my park run every week. I was trying to see if I could fit in a hot yoga with the Bikram yoga in Newry there, Jenny and stuff. And unfortunately, because I'm flying back tomorrow night, I'm not going to be able to fit it in. So it's really sort of like health and wellness for me now, because it is quite a stressful job, and obviously trying to build a business, trying to look after myself. Not that I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. Now I'm actually thinking, do you know what, in my 40s now, do you know what, I need to probably look after myself, and it's I'm really, really happy with that. I don't think I think
it's
could go out anymore and do nights out.
And you can have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look what you've got around you. The Moans on the doorstep, Carling Foods. It's just, my other half, when she comes over, just thinks it's just amazing.
She's not from here.
No, she's English. So yeah, she
to persuade her to move.
She's even more keen to come back than me. Yeah, she loves it.
Come back in a couple of years and tell us what's happened next.
Absolutely. So she's dying to get back as well. So she loves it over here.
Lovely. Now, the last question is one I ask every guest. The purpose of this podcast, Patrick, is to inspire existing business owners and those ambitious entrepreneurs out there to grow their businesses by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as Clarence George, the beautifully named Clarence George. What advice then would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin, or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking?
Great question. I think this one would be, well, if it's something that you've done in a corporate career, because obviously I've come from obviously doing it for a long time and for other people. So for me, that's why it wasn't sort of a massive thing trying to think of something new. But I think if it's a new business idea, I think just ultimately it's about just taking that first step, and it's back to that confidence thing. I would always advise people personally that get some experience before you do it. I was uber ambitious and probably thought I should have done it a lot earlier. And now looking back, I'm actually so glad I've done it at this age, because I do see a lot of people now, especially coming out of uni, they want to go in a startup. And that's why I've been able to thankfully attract some really good people, because I've got that startup story to tell people, but I see people like wanting to do it very, very quickly, and it's about life experience. So I'd say if you're a bit younger, just take a bit of time. You might work in some places that you might not necessarily completely be in love with, but if you're gaining from it and you're learning from it, then just really just be a sponge for those first 5-10 years out of uni, and then go and sort of set something up. And I think that's the big thing, because especially recruitment, a lot of people I've seen people at 24, 25 set up recruitment businesses after 2 years experience, and when times are good, they're flying. But it's when times aren't good, like the pandemics and recessions, and I'd seen a lot, I was able to sort of really take things with a level head. So for me, whatever it is, just, don't, it's difficult to say this as an entrepreneur, because I think we're naturally just really impatient people. I'm so impatient, and I still am. God knows what I was like 20 years ago. I think I was insufferable, but now it's just like, how do you just be, it's kind of like, what you want to do and you want to do it. So you got to take that step, but just do it gradually. Just dip your toe in the water. I wouldn't be quitting any jobs or anything until your idea is
Others have said that.
is actually going somewhere. So look, it's a bit different from 20 years ago when I came out, because there probably wasn't, the internet was only just really taken off. You can pretty much set up anything now, with anything online. But what I'd say with that is keep your full-time job. It might be monotonous, it might be boring, but keep that and just gradually build it up, and build that experience, because it's a long career, and you don't want to be launching 5 businesses by 30 and them all failing. What's the point? But definitely just take your time and be able to try and sort of, if you're naturally an entrepreneur, you'll have to sort of go against your instincts sometimes, and not trying to just go too quickly. And that's my advice. Just really pick good mentors, learn as much as you can, and then hopefully you're in a good position when you're ready to go.
Slow and steady wins the race. Patrick Flannagan, thank you so much for joining us on the Public Eye podcast today, and wishing you every success with the building of Clarence George, the beautifully named Clarence George, back here in Newry. Thanks very much to Patrick for joining me today, and thank you for listening. Join me next time on the Public Eye podcast. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.